When I was in my late 20s, I spent literally months in bed. But those months in bed taught me something that changed my entire life. It is the number one belief that has shaped who I am and shaped every bit of success that I have gotten in my life. So today I'm going to tell you exactly what that is. It was 2013. I had moved to London, England. Zach had gotten into graduate school and it was going to be a 2-year program. And I was so excited because I self-identified as a person who traveled. I had lived in Berlin at this point. I'd lived in Buenos Aires. I'd lived in Amsterdam. I was like, I am an adventurer. This is part of my self-conception. I was super stoked. So we packed our bags. We paid for a very expensive plane ticket for our cat Bella, and we went to England. And for the first few months, everything was great. We were exploring. London has markets everywhere in all of the neighborhoods. So we'd go to the Columbia Road Flower Market and we went to Borough Market. I was already noticing some red flags though. One thing I didn't realize about London is that it's incredibly spread out. Zach's school was over an hour away from our house, so he would invite me to come do stuff, but by the time I'd get ready, get on the tube, and get there, if him and his friends were like hanging out, having a beer at the local pub, that was over by the time that I got there. I was writing a book at the time, which did not end up being published, but writing full-time meant that I was very isolated. I didn't get a job where I went to an office, and I essentially didn't have the opportunity to make friends in that way. Okay, let's roll back even further to when I was 19 years old. I was traveling in Brazil by myself in my aforementioned adventure era, and I was also anorexic at the time. I wasn't really eating anything, and I also was doing a lot of drugs. I was very much in my party era, and I ended up buying weed from a questionable source and smoking that weed on the beach in Rio by myself. And I hadn't eaten for a very long time. And I remember sitting there on the beach. I had just smoked this joint and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really hungry. So I got up and I went to order a burger at a burger place and I had a seizure. It's interesting because it felt traumatic and scary at the time. Like I went to the hospital and I saw some really gruesome things there, but I just kept on partying. I kept traveling in South America. And I kept having these episodes where I would feel really dissociated and I would sit down and I would smoke a cigarette. And I thought that I was preventing having a seizure, but actually I was having a panic attack. The doctors had clearly said that I did not have any sort of seizure disorder. I just was in this very extreme circumstance, which at the time I did not think was extreme, which was part of the problem. So, starting at that time when I was 19 years old, I would have these panic attacks somewhat regularly, maybe once or twice a month. And in my head, every time one of these episodes happened, I was like, I'm preventing having a seizure. But really, I was having panic attacks that were the result of the PTSD from having this seizure in this foreign country completely by myself. Okay, zoom back to London. These panic attacks, which I had somewhat normalized in my life at this point, started to become more and more frequent. It started to go from a few times a month to every week and then a few times a week. And then I started to have panic attacks every single day. And again, I was really conflating this idea of having a seizure with having a panic attack. My heart was pounding, my chest felt really tight, my body felt like it was floating out of my body, and I felt like I had to grab this part of myself that was like floating away and pull it back into my body. And because I had conflated these feelings, doing anything outside of my house started to feel really, really unsafe. And then doing anything outside of my bed started to feel really, really unsafe. After a few months in London, I was having these episodes, which I now know are panic attacks, a few times a day. And this is also when my OCD behavior became really extreme. In Brazil, when I had the seizure, I went to the hospital. And like I said before, it was pretty traumatic. I saw people bleeding out. It was honestly really awful. But at this hospital, the doctor who was helping me, who ran a bunch of tests, basically the only diagnosis that he gave me was your blood sugar is low. He tossed me a pack of potato chips and he was like, eat these, this will fix it. And that really stuck in my head. Like, your blood sugar is low. That is what caused your seizure. And I think in part because I already had this really screwed up relationship with food, food started to take on this real anti-anxiety role in my life. I became like, okay, my blood sugar is low. If I can prevent my blood sugar from ever being low, I can prevent this weird dissociative feeling, and I can prevent myself from ever having a seizure again. It's so interesting to look back now and realize that I was essentially back to toxically regulating my emotions with my food take, just in a different way. So I was living in England. I was starting to have these panic attacks more and more frequently. And I had this voice in the back of my head, like, your blood sugar is low. Don't let your blood sugar be low. So I went and bought one of those home blood sugar test kits where you prick your fingers. And I started pricking my fingers to measure my blood sugar to ensure that my blood sugar wasn't dropping low, like 20 or 30 times a day. My fingertips were just raw and oozing blood because I was trying to assure myself that my blood sugar wasn't low and thus that I was safe from having one of these episodes. And I just remember this day super clearly where Zach invited me to a pub to watch a rugby game. And the idea of that felt so anxiety producing. My chest seized up. I couldn't breathe. My palms got really sweaty and I was like, I cannot go do this. And then I was so scared because I was like, how can I not go do this incredibly normal thing? Like, how can I not be able to go and watch a rugby game at a pub? It was so contrary to every idea that I had of who I was in my head, every bit of how I conceptualized my own identity. I just started to spiral more and more in on myself, and I became more and more afraid of anything in the outside world, and more just felt like my bed was the only place that I could really, truly feel safe. Most of my day I spent horizontal in bed, actually watching a lot of YouTube videos of different people with anxiety. I remember I watched Amanda Seyfried on one of the nightly talk shows, and even just feeling like, oh, okay, there is somebody else out there who went through this made me feel so much better. There's also a British YouTuber named Zoe, and she talked a lot about her anxiety, and I was like, okay, other people have dealt with this stuff and they survived. And that is honestly one of the reasons why I will not shut up about my anxiety story now, because I feel like as a person who came through on the other side, who now has any kind of public platform, if there is somebody who is out there in bed watching or looking for these types of people to just get that little sliver of hope, I feel like it is my responsibility to pay forward what people like Zoella and Amanda Seyfried gave me at that time without even realizing it. And it's my responsibility to put my story out into the world. I had been a writer and a journalist for years at this point, and my mind naturally sort of thinks in questions. I was like, where is all this anxiety coming from? Why do I feel so unsafe? What is happening in my brain? What is happening in my body? And most importantly, how do I get out of this cycle? So I'm lying in bed, and this is just how my journalist brain works. I start emailing people, and these are people that at the time I felt like I had no right to email. I wasn't writing for any sort of publication at the time. I could barely get out of bed. I had raw, oozing, bloody fingertips, but I did it anyway. I started emailing anybody who I could think of who might have answers to what was happening in my brain and my body, anybody who I could think of who might be able to help me figure out what I could do about it. Most of these people did not write back. I would say 98% of them did not write back, but 2% of them did. And that 2% started to give me information from their various areas of expertise. The RD started to tell me about food. The neuroscientist started to tell me about how my brain worked. And what I realized is this. 1, never be the one to say no to yourself. This is one of my life mottos. I believe in it so firmly, so strongly. Somebody else might say no, like a lot of those experts did not write back, and that was completely fine. But you never know when you're going to get a yes. It is always, always, always worth not being the one to say no to yourself. This experience was so hugely affirming of that truth, and that truth has carried over in so many other parts of my life. Never be the one to say no to yourself is how I got my husband. It's how I got my book deals. It's how I started my podcast. It's how I've gotten so many incredible podcast guests. I hear from so many listeners. I hear from you all the time, people who've gotten raises and partners and had all of these incredible things happen in their lives because they said, okay, other people can tell me no, but I am not going to be the one to say no to myself. And then the second thing that I learned is really the basis for this entire podcast, for everything that I'm doing here, which is that there is always a lever that you can pull. No matter how hopeless you feel, no matter what your life feels like at the moment, there is always a thing that feels tiny, but actually doing it makes such a big difference. It could be as simple as asking a question. There is always something that you have agency over. There is always something that is in your control. I think that this is what a lot of the health and wellness conversation, especially online, is missing. A lot of people are biohacking to add all of these years to their life, but in the name of adding all of these years, they're spending hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars adding things to their to-do list. And I am just not about that. Like, the trade does not feel worth it to me. And then there's this other part of the personal growth wellness world that's like, you can do this. I believe in you. You've got this, girl. And look, I do think that the way that we talk to ourselves is important. But if somebody is just telling me you can do this without telling me how, I'm going to be like, no, what are we doing here? Like, I want to know, first of all, I want scientific evidence. Evidence is a huge part of what motivates me to do something. It gives me that belief like, oh, this is shown to be effective. This has worked for other people. I'm always looking for that. And then I want to know, what are the levers? What are the action steps? What are the specific things that I can do? It's not like, oh, girl, you can do it. It's like, how can I do it? That's what I'm always looking for. And that is what I promise to give you with this podcast. The hows that are hard to see, that not enough people talk about, but that can really move the needle. I do not believe in creating new problems so that we can solve them. I do not believe in adding a million things to our already overwhelming to-do lists. If you do not feel good in something in your life, I'm going to help you identify it. I'm going to help you name that thing, and then I'm going to be like, okay, let's help you find what the small action is that you can do that's going to make a big difference. What are the levers that you can pull here? For me in London, the first lever that I could pull was just sending those emails. That was something that was in my control, that I could do when I was lying there in bed with my computer propped up on the pillow next to me. I could do that, even though I was having panic attacks multiple times a day, even though my fingertips were literally bleeding. That was still agency that I could exercise. And then I started doing the tiniest things first. I started meditating just from my bed. I started changing the way that I ate because of the way that different nutrients impact our brains and our bodies. I started doing yoga on the little sliver of floor at the foot of my bed in my bedroom because of the impact that movement has on mental health. So this is the big thing that I want to leave you with today. Think about something in your life that you're like, I hate this thing, but it's out of my control. Like, I hate my job, but the economy is bad and I can't get a new one. I feel low energy every day, but I don't have time to get the sleep that I want. I want a partner, but I have dated every single available person in my town, maybe in the whole state. I want you to think about a problem that you have, that thing that you've identified that doesn't make you feel the way that you want to feel in your life. Then I want you to think, what is one small bit of agency that I can have here? What is one small lever that I can pull? If you feel stuck in your job, can you make a friend at work, which research shows impacts our happiness even more than the actual work that we are doing at our jobs? If you feel tired every day, can you take a quick walk in the morning to set your circadian rhythm, which will give you more energy during the day and also help you sleep better at night? If you are struggling to find a partner, and that is a big goal of yours, can you write down these specific things that you're hoping that that person will add to your life? And then brainstorm ways that you can get some of those things, some ways that are in your control. You can be really creative. Go in telling yourself that there are options and your job is to find them. And try as much as you possibly can to quiet the shoulds. So many of the reasons that we think we do not have levers are because of societal shoulds that are not relevant to us, and they're not relevant to our goals, and they're not relevant to our real lives. This podcast is for the people that want more out of their careers, out of their relationships, out of their health, out of their entire life. There is real science behind achieving everything that you want, and I am here to wade through all of the advice coming from the internet and all of the studies and all of the different experts and help you find the one thing that actually works. Because I believe in the power of doing these one things over and over and over, and those things adding up to the life that you have always wanted. Sometimes I think about the past me, just ridden with panic, so uncomfortable, stuck in that bed. There were times that I was so hopeless. I was like, I don't think that my life is ever going to look different from this. I felt so physically uncomfortable in my body that I was like, I am not sure that life is worth living if my body and my mind are going to feel this uncomfortable day in and day out. And I just wish that I could tell that person that she was a few small compounding steps away from creating this big, beautiful life where she is traveling the world and she's married to the love of her life and she gets to do her literal dream job every single day and interview these incredible people and write these books and meet all of these people that her work has helped. It was just one little step and then another little step and then another little step. And it was the belief all along that these steps existed and that they would compound in a way that mattered. It was all of that. And it was me taking that agency that got me all of this. And I just wish that I could tell her, this is where you end up. If you are listening, I want you to know that no matter where you are, you can end up in a place that is so far beyond your wildest dreams. You don't need more information. You need the right information, the piece that finally makes it click. This channel helps you find the levers, the science-backed insights that give you real agency over your health and your energy and your relationships and your entire life. We have new episodes every week with the experts who have spent their careers studying why you feel the way that you feel and what you can actually do about it. And I will also be sharing episodes about how I am applying real science to pull my own levers so that you can hear my tried and tested experiences. I love you guys, and I will see you on the next episode of the Liz Moody Podcast.